Alrighty, let's get started. I have two 8x8 squares from Spoonflower. I left a little edge on there just to give me that extra length on each edge. And I'm just giving them a good iron. And I'm going to put them outside faces together. These are the two sides of my mask. And I'm going to iron them. And then I'm going to move over to my table and cut. Alright, we're over at the table now. And I'm going to take my two squares and make sure the edges are nice and lined up. And then I'm going to fold them diagonally and match the corners. Alright. And then I'm going to do the same thing again and match the corners. So now I have a little triangle. On one corner of this triangle, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure, measure down on the straight side. Did you see me just trying to do that on the raw edge? I'm measuring down on the folded edge of that 2.5 inches. Okay, you see how that says 2.5 inches, and this is my folded edge. And then I'm going to take my cutter and cut across that. Might want to do these one at a time because this is a little bit thick. Alright, then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, except this time I'm going to flip that over so I can keep that folded edge on the straight edge. This time I'm just going to cut off 1 inch. Okay. Alright, there we go. So now I have this kind of elongated looking piece of fabric, and it's like a hexagon. It's stretched out in the middle. Okay, and now we're going to go over to the sewing machine. Alright, here we are at the sewing machine, and we're going to line the presser foot up with any one of the larger edges. We're going to leave this shorter edge open and sew all the way around, keeping our presser foot lined up on the edge there. Get to the corner, make sure your needle is down, lift up your presser foot, line up the edge, put the presser foot down. Side, lift up your presser foot, lift up your presser foot, side, lift up your presser foot, lift up your presser foot, lift up that presser foot, last and tack it, and then trim those threads. Alright, so now we have it sewn all the way around except on this one edge here. So we're going to take that opening and we're going to turn the whole thing inside out. Okay, And make sure our corners are real nice, and then we're going to press that. So I meet you back over at the... All right, over at the ironing board, we have everything folded out, and our corners are pretty nice. This corner right here got completely lost, so I don't know why I'm saying pretty nice. Let's get our little seam ripper I used, get some corners out there if I need to. There we go. There's my corners. And there's my corners. Okay. And then on that one open edge, we're going to go ahead and fold that in. Now the important thing about this edge right here is that lengthwise it needs to match this edge. So in folding that, in order to fold it to the right spot, I'm going to put it right up to that edge that I'm folding to. Looks like I have a weak corner over there too. Let's get that out. And make sure that those corners match up. Okay? And when we get those the same length, we're going to fold that and press all around with our little, I use this little Conair steam iron. I love it. And I use my wet fingers to roll those edges so that they're nice and beautiful. So, yes, maybe make sure you wash this mess since I'm licking those wet fingers. And we don't want to spread germs. Okay. So once we get that nice and folded, notice how beautiful. It's a big hexagon now, stretched along one side. That's corner there. What? Okay. All right, and there's the other side. Making sure those edges are all lined up, nice and crisp. Make sure nothing's leaning over one way or the other. That's when I get in those wet fingers and roll it, because you can see that was a little bit tucked in there. We want to make sure those are all tucked out there. All right. And seriously, that's okay. And iron along those edges. Okay. That should be good and flat. Okay. Now we're going to take the two long edges and fold them towards each other. Now this part, you kind of want to decide, is this going to be the outside or is this going to be the outside? I'm going to make this side the outside. And so I'm going to fold, maybe I might not. Maybe I'll make that, no, I'm going to make that the outside. Okay, so I'm going to fold in. I'm just going to fold these in evenly so they match up. And the way you really want to see the match up here is that you want this length right here to be equal to that length right there. Okay, so looking at those two lengths, and I'm just eyeballing it and then matching up those, and then doing the same thing to the other side, looking at those two and matching up those lengths. All right, and you can, this is, you know, not a perfect world. So don't worry if it's a little bit off, that won't matter. We want to just press that. You can give it a couple of hot steams. Okay. Now you want to go to those ends and fold that in. And this part you want to look right here. You want to take that and you want to fold it in just like an envelope. Okay? And to as much as you can, do the exact same thing to the other side, keeping that width even. Even if it means there's a little gap, that's okay. All right? And then do it to the other side. You're folding it about 1/4 of an inch. And sometimes those will line up just nice, and sometimes they overlap a little bit. You can undo it a little bit so they line up nicely. And I'm going to do that to this side as well, making sure those are just good. All right. Now, I'm going to take, alrighty, we're going to, I took a piece of pipe cleaner and I folded it and twisted it so that it's exactly the length of this longer edge. Okay, and I'm going to stick it in there and press it up to that edge as tight as I can so that there's no folds in that edge. Okay, and that those corners are lined up, the pipe cleaner's lined up well in those corners. I'm just going to push it with my fingernails there, and then I'm going to use a couple of clips to hold those two sections till I get to them. Okay, and now I'm going to be sewing with the white side up here, so I'm going to rethread my upper thread to white thread. And if you have alternating sides on yours, you might want to do the same. Otherwise, bear with me for a sec till we get this threaded. Alrighty. Okay. Now we're going to, you can see, I'm going to start on that edge, keeping my fabric lined up again with the edge of that presser foot. And I'm going to sew right along the edge of that pipe cleaner, squeezing it into that seam. And I'll show you as I go. Hopefully I'm going to go here. Because the pipe cleaner kind of keeps the presser foot off the ground, I use both hands in there to direct that so that it stays nice and crispy. As you can see, it drifted a little there. So it stays nice and crispy along that edge and makes a nice straight seam. When I get to the corner, I'm going to put my presser foot down. I'm going to turn, and just like I did before, I'm going to go around the whole edge there, top stitching 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric. And getting to the corner, turn, oop, sorry, bopped you. And same thing all the way around. And my fingers in there, it's really easy to do the other edges. And finishing those off all the way around. Back to that pipe cleaner edge where I started. going to go back over. I'll see you at the ironing board in a sec. Sorry, I forgot we already did iron those in. So I'm just going to go back and fold those back over where we had them. And now I do need to have my dark, I'm doing my dark side out and my dark side on the back, so I need both threads to be the same color on this part. This is a little wacky part of sewing two different fabrics. You can make this easier by sewing the same, but most of the time if you're sewing two 8-inch swatches like I've made this to do, you're using up swatches of different colors. So you will not be. Maybe you can pick two swatches with that you would use the same color of thread for. That might make it easier. Okay, so I'm going to catch this edge in there and sew right along the edge, making a casing there on that 1/4 inch that we folded over at the ironing board. And I'm going to go all the way to the edge, catching the corner of that other side in there. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other 1/4 inch side, okay? So I sewed all the way to the corner. So on the back side, you see it's the whole length I sewed there. All right, and I'm going to do that same thing on this side, starting right at the corner. I'm going to, sorry again, sew that whole side. And same there. So I have a straight edge all the way across. All right, and that makes my casing for my elastic. Now, the last step, we're going to come back down here for a second so you can see this. This is a little bit of a tricky part, okay? Notice that this is where our elastic is going to go in, okay? Alrighty, this is the tricky part. So I want to make sure you're we're going to take this flap edge and we're going to lay it right down on that edge right there. So we're going to fold it back so it's straight along that edge. Okay, and you'll feel that wire in there, that's okay. And we're going to take a pin and pin that. And we're going to do that same thing to the other 4 edges. Okay, I'm going to make sure that edge is straight along there. And then I'm going to sew. Notice I have already switched my thread back to white on top because I'm going to be sewing with the white on top. And I'm going to sew as straight as I can. I'm going to actually sew all the way across this edge to make that a nice even seam there. And just basically tacking that down. And then I'm going to keep that seam that I've already made on the inside of that to kind of keep a little bit of straightness there. Okay. And tucking that in as well, and being careful not to hit that end of that paper, or that pipe cleaner. Okay. So that I have another, hopefully, somewhat straight seam across there. Not too good. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Hopefully getting a little better at this each time. Oops. Okay. And I'm going to keep that seam as straight as possible across there so it doesn't get too funky. And there we go. I think I did worse that time, but anyway, you get the idea. You'll get better as you go. All right, so the last step is to put some elastic in there. I like to use really thin elastic. And the reason I use really thin elastic is that it makes it easier to wear for a long time behind your ear, and especially if you have glasses or other things behind your ear. So I'm going to take a loop of elastic. I'm going to stick my crochet hook in the casing, and I'm going to hook that elastic on the corner of that crochet hook and hold it tight as I pull it through. All right, and then I'm going to, alrighty, and then pull that elastic through. I like to look at it like this. Put that on there. This should be an equilateral triangle. So this edge, and this edge, all the same. Then I pinch it, clip it, and tie a knot. Now if you're making this for somebody with a big face, you might want to make that more isosceles than equilateral. But this knot can be taken out. Okay, so when you give this to somebody, if it's not for you, you want to tell them you can take that knot out and change, or just add knots if you want to make it shorter. But for right now, we're going to, after you knot it and after they change the knot, you want to pull it back inside the casing. So let them know there's a knot in there, that if you pull on this, you can pull that knot back out of the casing to change the size. So if it's too tight or not tight enough, you can change the length of that elastic by pulling that knot out and putting it closer to the edge or knotting it farther down. Okay? Once again, I like to keep mine, I started off with this basically being a equilateral triangle. And snip that, knot that, and slide it inside the casing. Okay, now we are done, and you can try that on, and I'm going to do just that. Maybe I should have prepared for this part, but all right, and put that on and put that behind your ears. The important part is to tuck it under, and then this mask rides low on the nose, which is the advantage. It rides under the glasses, and pitch it right around the tip of your nose. So you have plenty of breathing room. And as you breathe out, it's not going to fog up your glasses. Okay? And if you've used that cotton sateen, it is a pretty soft and comfortable mask throughout the day, and it stays out of your glasses, stays out of the way of the glasses here, and it's not that large, so it's not too distracting as you go through your day. Alrighty.